It is my birthday. I'm 32 years old. Remember that number. We're going to get into it. But in this video, in this live stream, it's a lengthy live stream, but not void of real content. Okay. If you're jumping in after the fact, after this uploads on YouTube, etc., we're talking Q2 earnings preview today from top to bottom, balance sheet, income statement, and year-over-year metrics and PE valuation implications. We are talking stock talk, reviewing catalysts, and then very many of them kind of updating the timeline, the likelihood, etc. We are adding a little bit of context to one of the videos that I posted last week. We are talking general stock price expectations, stocks versus warrants. Lots of fun stuff going on in this video, which is all to say, master your money, free your future. Welcome to Budget for Life. My name is Jeremy. I am not a professional YouTuber, but I am a financial advisor, and this video is not financial advice. We're doing this for education, for entertainment. I do appreciate all those who subscribe, who like, who comment, who share. This channel has aligned interests, right? The good of this channel is hopefully for the good of you as an investor, is hopefully for the good of GameStop, the investment opportunity. I do also want to say thank you to those who join the channel as fans and friends. All the earnings go to DRS Book GME shares, including if on a live stream, you should be so inclined to ever drop a super chat. That does not technically buy me a coffee. Okay, technically it just adds to the Budget for Life infinity pool, which 52 shares at $18.15 a share, dropping the Budget for Life cost basis total down to $21.38. I'm thinking that's going to age quite well. Quite well. So again, thank you for all of the contributions, etc. Lots of evergreen GameStop content on my channel for anyone who wishes to partake. And in the chat today, you guys are being super nice. Chad, 2013, Garcon, Dat Young, Justin, Lolero, all with the happy birthday wishes. The Real Father, Red King, Adam, Stuffbox, Paul Ray, Soul Catcher. It's also, by the way, guys, thank you for the birthday wishes. It is not only my birthday. It is 4 other people's birthdays today. Alpha David, thanks for the 5 jewels. The little dog bone, appreciate it so much. I will do my best to be attentive to the live chat, to engage with you guys. That's part of the fun of this stream, is just to have fun, to turn red into green. We do have almost 2 hours until market close, and it is my birthday. Not that GameStop owes me anything. They certainly do not. But would it be fun if we saw a little bit of something? I don't know. We did see some interesting price action on Friday for the warrants. So does that momentum build into something? Do we see anything after hours today? Probably not. But regardless, it has been, check it out. It has been 2 weeks since I live streamed. So there actually are just a lot of maintenance updates to discuss, much happening. And like I said, I will do my best to be attentive to the chat. But if you want to make sure that I see your question or thought or comment or thanks, feel free to leave a super. No expectation, no pressure to. You're not better as a human being if you do. But practically, it goes to DRS Book GME shares. It helps to reach the channel. And it makes sure that I see it. So the other birthdays. Man, so many of you guys in here. Snakes, great to see you. Sabu, Hugh, Mr. Beakers, Cactus. Hey, congrats, Cactus. Your son turned 4. That's awesome. Augustus, thanks, guys, for being here. 4 August 24th birthdays. Importantly, William Wilberforce. Happy birthday, William. Or Bill. Instrumental in the abolition trade. Cheers to that. Much less weighty, one of the best shortstops of all time, Cal Ripken. Happy birthday to you, Cal. The least accomplished, but the closest to home. The best running back in Houston Texans history, Arian Foster. Cheers to you, Arian. Happy birthday. And last but not least, our favorite side plot supporting cast member, Rupert Grint. Happy birthday, Rupert. To all the other Virgos out there, happy birthday, August 24th. What a day to be alive. What a day to be alive. Paul Ray says undrafted as well. He's talking about Arian. Cal Ripken drafted. 19-time All-Star. Yeah, Arian Foster. I did not even realize I shared a birthday with him until today. Wilberforce, for that matter. I had heard Cal Ripken and Rupert Grint, but I'm very excited to know that there are a couple other people that share an August 24th birthday. Thank you, Dalton, for the happy birthday wishes. Where should we start? I'll start with cleaning up something, not cleaning up, but adding something to a video I posted last week. Red King says Rupert was rough. I have not even seen all of the Harry Potter movies, and I have not read a single one of the books. So I can't say that I'm genuinely a fan of yours, Mr. Grint. But I did appreciate reading today that his lifelong goal in childhood, become an ice cream man. I thought, if Rupert was alive today, he surely would be a GME hodler. These are the aspirations of the true GameStop investors. The OGs, the midnight releases of the new video games. Rupert, as far as I'm concerned, you're one of us, but I'm not a connoisseur of fiction novels or movies, which makes our lives, unfortunately, miles apart from each other. It's nothing personal. Clearing up something from last week, adding something to last week. So this DK Butterfly video, it ends with, this kind of personal story from October 22nd. This, hey, you don't have to believe God's alive, okay? I'm just sharing a story, right? But the story pretty much goes, hey, there's going to be a restoration for DK Butterfly. The primary message that story is spoken through is this passage in Jeremiah 32. 32. Remember what I said, guys? I said at the very beginning of this live stream, 32. What did I just turn today? 32. Jeremiah 32. It's a long chapter, but it ends better than it starts, which is restored fortunes potentially for DK Butterfly, ultimately for GME, right? That's the main goal. That's the point. You don't have to agree with any of this speculation. There's just one other added piece of the story that I forgot to mention, which connects to Jeremiah 32, which is that at the beginning, in December of every year, Jeremy Wayne BR, the 12th generation BR, 7th generation American, in December, I get slightly pensive as it relates to the coming year. I'm not a New Year's resolution guy, particularly, but I am a, what's kind of a theme? What's like something for me to kind of lean into, maybe a value, something, just general area of my life to work on? What's kind of my inspiration, motivation, just a little bit of fresh, positive self-talk heading into a new calendar year? Do any of y'all do this? New calendar year, look for a theme, or am I the only one? I like to look for a theme, and this December, and of course for me, it's not solely introspective. It is introspective, but it's also what I would call a prayerful process. In this process, this past December, thinking 2026, you guessed it, the theme was Jeremiah 32. Now, I did not remember that Jeremiah 32 was connected to this DK Butterfly October 22nd. I knew that October 22nd had happened. I didn't know the date. I had to look up my calendar historically to find that date. But I knew about those signs of, hey, maybe DK Butterfly will come back to life, whatever. I didn't remember that the passage that was read from, spoken to me back in 2023 was Jeremiah 32, when this past December, thinking about 2026, the theme from Jeremiah 32 rises to the cream of the crop, which, again, starts rougher than it finishes. The rough part being ignored warnings that lead to exile for Israel historically, right? So there are ways that connects to my life. We don't have to dive into all of it, but the added hopium to the whole DK Butterfly recovery, generally one of many catalysts to catapult GME into not just price improvement, not just, oh, we're back to 26 a share, but genuinely in a we might really squeeze type of momentum. The added extra piece was, oh yeah, and by the way, right, this 2023 prayer meeting, oh, by the way, Jeremiah 32 just so happens to be my theme for 2026, which was also a generally prayerful process. It doesn't mean that a recovery is happening in 2026, but that is a hopium reason why I think it very well could happen in 2026, beyond the logical reasons that I discuss in this video as it relates to just the 3-year look back window for NOLs and the general timing of the bankruptcy court, as well as the ending of the pricing window for the 1.4 billion in convertibles, etc. Jeremiah 32. I just turned 32. What else is 32? What else is 32, my guys and my girls? Sorry, I don't need to call you my girls. Sorry. What's up, everyone, by the way? Thank you, Montal and Fizzle and Gold, Ashton Kutcher, Frosty Leaf, Fox Zig. Thank you, Hazel and Sean and Jose, for all of the birthday wishes. Hazel nailed it. Fox Zig gets runner-up. Fox Zig is also 32. So cheers to that. But what else is 32? The warrant conversion price. Hazel, thank you, Hild, for the happy birthday wishes. The warrants convert at 32. Mr. Plaid Pants says Karl Malone wore number 32. Okay, there you go. What else is 32? Since we're talking 32, geez. The warrants convert at 32. Well, the strike price is 32 for the warrants, which is, again, maybe nothing, but kind of fun for me personally. It's just fun for me personally. Okay, don't get too worked up. But it's fun that I just turned 32. That the warrants convert at 32. And that Paul Ray went bald at 32. Just kidding. And that Jeremiah 32 is connected to my theme for 2026, which I summarized the theme as return to the land, which again has more variations and meanings for me personally beyond just investments. But, oh, Shaquille O'Neal was 32. Let's go. Dunk on him. 32, kind of fun year. Kind of fun year. If you think it's fun, cheers. If you don't worry. That part of the video has just concluded. It's just concluded. Which, by the way, talking about 32 is the strike price. Chris Clifton says 16 times 2 is 32. What is that? Is that just a random... Is that just another fact about 32, or is there some fun connection to 16? Chris? Warrants versus shares. Personally, I've described in the comment section before that right now for new money, I like shares. Oh, Chris Clifton says half of 64 is also 32, which is a number used in computing a ton. Good to know. I like shares for my new dollars right now, but I'm very torn because I like shares and I like warrants. And you know what they're both associated with? A company I like named GameStop Corporation. So it's not something that I feel like there needs to be a fight about in the GameStop community. But ultimately, if you are investing dollars that you really value protection, if there are any dollars in your portfolio that you wish to that you really wish to protect the downside risk, then buying warrants right now would be a suboptimal decision. If you're solely focused on, not solely, but if you really value risk protection, these warrants, until we get to 32.01 in GameStop shares trading price, the warrants have no value, no intrinsic value. They do have value. They're right now they're worth $1.66. But that conversion window is 2 months out. So GameStop, for the warrants to end up eventually having any financial value, GameStop has to just about double. And how much value would the warrants have if GameStop doubled? Well, the warrants would basically just about double. You would only have upside on the warrants beyond a 90% gain on GME. So you still have a lot of room for upside on GME if what you value is upside, with substantially more downside protection. Obviously, these shares do not expire. Is there dilution risk with the shares? Yes. But accretive. Even the early conversion of the 1.4 billion of convertible senior notes, this is just all the rage, right? This is the latest reason to hate Ryan Cohen for some reason, right? But if I were to tell you, forget this post, forget that. If I were to just tell you, hey, GameStop this month is initiating a $600 million share buyback. A $600 million share buyback happening within the next 30 days. Would you be happy or sad that the stock is low? You might still be sad because it's fun when it's up, right? You could just be sad because you feel like being sad. But in reality, the lower the share price is, the more shares that $600 million can buy. $600 million is the net cash going to buybacks. Where am I getting this from? Okay, GameStop has approved a $2 billion buyback. Simultaneously, they are diluting $1.4 billion. So everyone hates, oh man, the pricing window, $1.4 billion. It's screwing the stock. Look at this. We're down 16% since this thing happened, and we were already so down. Right? I've been scooping up these shares joyfully in July, June. I mean, really for the past 5.5 years of my life, but quite intently recently, as an imminent repricing seems more and more likely. And we're down 16% based on the 1.4 billion of dilution. But what has not been announced yet? The execution of the $2 billion buyback. When can GameStop execute the $2 billion in buybacks? They could have pre-scheduled it to be happening right now. They could be buying back the shares right now. If they didn't pre-schedule it, then they would have to wait until after they report earnings. When do they report earnings? Well, they haven't said yet. Probably around September 9th. Could be plus or minus. But generally speaking, early September, they report earnings. 48 hours later, they can buy back their shares. How many shares? If dilution's what you hate, then what you want is the smallest share count possible. By converting 1.4 billion in notes early and initiating this pricing window, you are artificially suppressing the going rate for your shares, which means you are artificially enhancing the number of shares that you can buy back with net $600 million. Will if they dilute 1.4 billion at 18 a share, back 2 billion at 18 a share, what happens to the float? Is it bigger or is it smaller? It's smaller. 2 is bigger than 1.4. Right? But how do we know they will? Well, we don't know that they will. They could not. Which is why in my earlier videos discussing the early here you go. These two videos talking about the early convertibles, I really focused more so on what this signals post pricing. Post pricing window, this signals more institutional longs, less suppression of volatility, and a convergence of many catalysts that together aim to propel GameStop well beyond $32 a share. That's really like the more exciting piece of the convertibles. But even if you felt like all of that was so speculative, if all you knew was, oh, GameStop wants to buy back $600 million worth of stock, well, great. If they start doing that on the open market, maybe the stock runs and they end up buying shares at 30 a share. Well, if they start buying shares at 30 a share and then they're shorted back to 22, then what did GameStop do? They just lit some money on fire. But if GameStop wants to buy shares without it causing any type of run, well, what a genius way to knock two birds out with one stone. You do a private exchange, 1.4 billion. So now there's other institutions that are incentivized for the stock to be as low as possible. Enter in GameStop, dump in your $2 billion, and net of both of these events, you have fewer shares in the float than you did before. It's great. Chris Clifton. Give it up for Chris. Way to go, Chris. Thank you so much. 5 gifted memberships, courtesy of Chris Clifton. And many of you guys wishing me happy birthday. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Zeji. Thank you, That Talk. Gypsy Hard. Ben. Thank you, guys. 2 billion is greater than 1.4. So even if you think all the catalysts post-window are hopium, the reality is if GameStop deploys the 2 billion, then net they've decreased their share count. So you should be happy that the price is low. Now, what's going to be the inflection point for the shares? The inflection point for the shares, and by the way, what we don't know is what is the agreed upon pricing floor, right? Sub share price floor. We don't know. Thanks, Sam Grady. Thanks. Downwego says hit the like. We don't know what the floor is, but we know that it's an average price per day. It's average based on the volume. So when you look at how much volume has happened so far, we have already seen 128 million shares in volume, but 73 of that was in the first week of the window. In the 2 weeks since then, we have 55 million shares of volume. What does that mean? It means that week 1 was 3 weeks. Week 1 was 3 weeks of volume. 26 times 3 is 78, I suppose. Week 1 did 73. Right? We basically did 3 weeks of volume in week 1, which means we are already 5 weeks in. If you want to think about it that way, we are 5 weeks in to a 9-week pricing window. Week 1 is 3 weeks. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, shortened 8 for Labor Day, 9. We're 5 weeks into a 9-week pricing window. Right now, VWAP, by the way, is 1879. I know y'all are thinking, ooh, sucks, right? Ooh, sucks. Remember, 2 is bigger than 1.4. 2 is bigger than 1.4. 1879 is the VWAP. Guess what? Right now, that's a nice little pop. 1879 is $1 a share of appreciation. We're already 5% lower than the VWAP. But what's going to be the inflection point? Because we've still been generally trending down. Well, again, we're 5 weeks in to a 9-week window. What have we seen on the dailies? 2 times GameStop has issued convertibles subject to a pricing window that was a daily VWAP. Generally, the floor in market hours was somewhere around like 1:30 p.m., 1:30 p.m. Central. meaning 2 hours, like to maybe just 90 minutes, 90 to 120 minutes left in the trading day, and 4.5 hours in. What's 4.5 hours in terms of minutes? Four point five, 270. 270 minutes into the window would get you from 8:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then you have 120 minutes left from 1 p.m. to close. Together, it's 390 minutes in a trading day. $390 minutes in a trading day. If this is the inflection point for our weeks, 120 divided by, well, let's do it the other way. 270 divided by 390. Surprise, surprise, you want to get about 2/3 of the way through your pricing window. 2/3 of the way through is probably the inflection point. Man, how are we ever going to do this math? What's 2/3 of 9? 6. There you go. How many weeks are we in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is week 6. Hey. Hey. This is week 6. Now, what if, hey, the inflection point's not really 1 p.m. The inflection point's really more like 1:30. Well, then you're looking at 300 versus 90. If you're taking 90, sorry, let's do the 210. $300 divided by 390, then you want to be 77% of the way through. Which means instead of 6 weeks through, you want to be 7 weeks through. Six weeks, 7 weeks. Now it could be as far as 8 weeks. If you want to say, hey, it's not really 1:30, it's really 2 p.m. 1 hour left to market close in daily terms is the bottom, right? That's the floor. Let's see if this maths out. Times 9. Oh, great. Just 7.6 weeks. 7 weeks, 3 days. Boom. Thank you for the birthday wishes, Ryan, SC. This is a fine day. Larry Jones. Thank you, Larry. Active Rehab. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. When's the inflection point in the pricing window? Some of y'all think, man, this pricing window, this sucks so bad. How much, why do we have to sit through this all the way till September 23rd? Well, you probably don't have to sit through all the way till September 23rd. The window closes somewhere from like not closes. The window doesn't literally close. But at the end of 6 weeks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to maybe September 10th. Somewhere in here is likely the inflection point. August 24th is not important. It's just my birthday. That's why I made it bold and green. Somewhere in here is the inflection point. When did I tell y'all that unless GameStop has pre-scheduled their $2 billion buyback, when can they do their buybacks? They can do their buybacks 48 hours after they report earnings. Now, on my channel, there's a video titled What You're Not Seeing GameStop's Buybacks, which is somewhere, here you go. What you're not seeing from GameStop's $2 billion buyback. This video hopefully is helpful to clarify what some of y'all will think. Well, but don't they have to spread it out? They can't do it in one day, right? They can do it in one day. Just watch this video. They absolutely could dump all $2 billion in one day at the inflection point if they report earnings. Do they report early? They have the option to, right? They haven't announced that they're reporting yet, so you would expect them to wait. I wonder if Google happens to know, like, when is the earliest that GameStop can legally report Q2 earnings? Great, as soon as they want to. Big picture. How soon prior to earnings report does a company have to announce the date? They do not have to say. They don't have to say. Great. As soon as GameStop wants to, they can report. Literally. They could report today. I will be watching GameStop. I will be watching. But they probably won't report today. They'd probably wait till at least the 28th to get through 2/3 of this window. It's really not the 28th because it's a little bit more than 6 weeks. It's 6 weeks plus 1 day. So really the soonest would be September 1st. Latest would be September 10th. If this pricing window mirrors the pricing window of the prior two convertibles, from a volume perspective, the inversion is somewhere right here. And is it any coincidence? Again, some of y'all are like, why is it 35 days? Why can't it be shorter? It sucks that it's 35 days. It's so bad for the stock. Well, it's actually good for the stock because they can't, if you want them to do a net $600 million buyback and artificially guarantee a very low entry point on their buyback, meaning they can close that many more shares, retire that many more shares that much more efficiently. If you want the buybacks to have the maximum impact possible, you would want the price as low as possible, and you would want it to hang on until after they file earnings and then 48 more hours. So they file earnings, maybe early, so that they can issue their buyback at literally the bottom, potentially. Now, we could already be at the bottom. which is why if you're GameStop, you might be incentivized to file early to ensure that you can get a bite at this apple before the very end of this window. Once we're towards the end of this window, we also have other catalysts coming into play, right? You might not be able to end up with quite as nice of an entry point. Right now, the share price is literally lower than the VWAP. So if hypothetically, if they could buy today, they're buying at 18 and they sold at 19. So not only are they netting they're waiting to buy 600 million more than the sell. You know, the buy is almost a time and a half as much weight as the sale. Not only are they overweighting the buy, but right now they would also be winning on the spread. The VWAP is higher than the entry point. The VWAP has to average all 35 days. That's the sale, all 35 days. And it takes in all these catalysts that are coming in. It takes in earnings numbers, takes in other announcements that might come. The VWAP is all 35 days. GameStop's buyback, they can do it on the day that they want to, the inflection point, which is very exciting to me. Soggy Dog says happy birthday. So does Bubbles. Hey, I'm not a big astrology guy either, Bubbles. Billy says happy birthday. So does Mr. Zombie Bear. So does Matt Casson. Thanks, guys. Ryan Sartell says, would spending money on buybacks hurt our chances of acquiring eBay? I would say no. Financing is not going to be the issue. I mean, really, there's not going to be an issue. I think Cohen is prepared to buy eBay. Thanks, Dole. Thanks, Sanji or Sanji. Literally, the 600. Think about it this way to answer your question, Ryan Sartell. So we know that Cohen has said, hey, there's a lot of interested parties, a surplus of interested parties, which would make you think they've got plenty of money. We also know that it has been strongly hinted via interview, which is somewhere on here. Who knows where, really? It has been hinted that GameStop is prepared to issue an all-cash offer and probably already has issued an all-cash offer, which again would show you, man, it seems like there's plenty of cash available. But even more specifically than either of those, Ryan Cohen has literally said on his interview with, what are they called? All In Podcast. He literally said he is funding $500 million towards the acquisition. What is the net buyback that we're talking about? $2 billion minus $1.4 billion, $600 million. We're talking about a cash expense of $600 million, and we're talking about Ryan Cohen adding to the combined entity via special purpose vehicle, probably Teddy. He's putting $5 of those $6 back into the company himself. So basically, GameStop gets to do a free buyback without any implication to its own cash position. It's pretty epic. Hey, thanks, Mr. Zombie Bear. He says Virgo on the Leo cusp. I like that. I'm not super familiar with astrology, but I was reading what the signs meant last week, and I was like, yeah, but I'm just I just am on the very beginning of Virgo. I feel like I've got a little bit of Leo, but I can still see but does that count? Are you allowed to be like, hey, I'm a Virgo, but I'm kind of the tweener. I still got a little bit of that other action going on. So that's cool that you call it a cusp. I like it. Burgess asked me, what do I make of the rumor that they're taking the offer off the table? I have made a dedicated video about that, which is maybe a live stream. Maybe it was in a live stream. The Financial Times article. I don't even know where it is. Oh, maybe it wasn't Financial Times and it was a different article. Anyways, Financial Times is down there. Regardless, that's what I make of it. Whatever video it was that I reacted to it. Thanks, Elisa and Benji. Say happy birthday. Chris Clifton says, can he legally do, what if Ryan Cohen's 500 is in addition to the 600 buyback? I don't understand exactly what you're saying. The $2 billion buyback net of the 1.4 billion dilution is a $600 million buyback, which is $600 million in net cash that will leave GameStop's balance sheet. So when you look at their net cash and their net liabilities, right, this 4.2 will go down by 1.4, but this cash and securities number will remain unchanged by the 1.4, but it will go down by 2. They got to spend the cash to buy their shares back. On GameStop's balance sheet by itself, which none of this would happen until Q3 or beyond, right? Q2 numbers have already been written, which we will pontificate about in this live stream. But $2 billion leaves your balance sheet, but $1.4 billion leaves your liabilities, which leaves your net cash higher by $600 million, but it leaves your raw cash down by $2 billion. That said, the $5 billion not 5 billion, 500 million that Ryan Cohen is contributing to the deal, he can't just transfer 500 million to GameStop directly. He is putting 500 million into Teddy. Teddy one day will be a holding company, and GameStop's financials will be a subsidiary of Teddy, along with eBay's financials will be a subsidiary of Teddy, hypothetically. So it's not literally 500 getting put back into GameStop's bank account, but it's 500 million getting put back into a bank account that is higher than GameStop's bank account. So the combined entity would have the money back, if that makes sense. Riz Harris says, happy birthday. Thank you so much. Jack Piper says, how would Teddy through DK Butterfly not be dilutive to current shareholders? It would be, Jack Piper. It would be dilutive. Which I talked about it a good amount in this DK Butterfly video, but the see GameStop play, those of us who are 2020 apes, I'm not, I got involved January 2021. The OGs in the chat never wanted any other company to be involved in any way. The dream was always GameStop to the moon, period. Ryan Cohen has made it very clear many times that is not how he views the GameStop opportunity. His goal is not pure play GameStop to the moon. His goal is GameStop plus some missing pieces to the moon. In other words, his goal is Teddy to the moon. His goal is not to avoid dilution at all costs. If he can dilute and end up better off for it, he will do it. If he can dilute 60% of his company and end up with eBay that represents 5 times the earnings power, well, that's a net win. If he can dilute 1 or 2% of his company for DK Butterfly and end up with an insane amount of short interest, as well as 500 mil plus worth of NOLs, then that's a net win. So we'll see if he does get DK Butterfly or not. Like I said, even through my hopium lens, I still only call it a 50% chance. It's not something I think is inherently likely. It's just something I'm hoping for. But it would be dilutive, but not necessarily dilutive for GameStop directly, but dilutive for Teddy, which GameStop would be a subsidiary of. So in a sense, your valuation is still affected. But the goal is, how big of a total value can he create? And it matters to, like, Ryan Cohen's proposed compensation was tied to a 10x on GME legacy, adjusted for any acquisitions or dilutions. Like, forget eBay, forget DK Butterfly. GameStop shareholders need to see a 10x, which now would be more like a 12x based on the current value. But GameStop needs to be a $100 billion company. GME does. Not the combined entity, $100 billion. The combined entity might be $500 billion by the time that GameStop's portion of it is $100 billion. So why would you don't have to like it, but if you did like it, Cohen's vision, the reason why you would is because he's put his name on the line and his money on the line. He owns a ton of shares. He doesn't take any compensation. And even when he talked about taking compensation, it was only in the context of making it right for the OGs, for the GameStop GME shareholders. So it's not like you're getting left out of the deal if you're a GME shareholder. It's just like there's more people that also get to be in on the deal in one way or another. If you wanted to play Teddy, I think GME is still the best play. I would not personally go by eBay thinking you're going to get a better piece of the pie. eBay costs $107. GameStop costs $18. eBay would be about 60% of the company. GameStop would be about 40% of the company. Is 18 40% of 107? Or is it less? Is it more or less than 40% of 107? Well, guess what 40% of 100 is? Forget the extra $7. What's 40% of 100? 40. 18 is less than half of 40. So even if we do all the dilution, right? Forget the all cash deal. What if it's as dilutive as we fear? Well, frick, we just got 2.5 times the amount of value that we should get based on just our equity. Our market cap combined with your market cap says that we should get 1/6 of this company. And instead, we're looking at getting 40% of this company. If you don't like it, sell your shares. If you don't like Cohen, sell your shares. If you don't believe in, trust Cohen's leadership, you should maybe consider selling your shares. It's gotten honestly pretty fun in the chat these days because I'm getting more trolls, which to me is a signal that we're close, a signal that this inversion is coming quickly and could be coming sooner. It doesn't have to be this long, but it could be. Regardless, I'm getting all types of first-time commenters that are super bearish, and some of you guys even maybe are turning bearish as you get exacerbated by the miserable price action. I know it's been challenging for my clients who hold a substantial position in GameStop stock and warrants. There are plenty of them that are like, man, when do we get to be done, Jeremy, with how insanely bullish you are on GameStop? When can we start to move on? at least with certain portions of this play. And I'm like, look, you can fire me today if you want to. Okay. I do not possess custody of your funds. You can transfer your position out any day of the week. I'm not holding you hostage. But if you're asking me, I don't think you should do that. Like I'm feeling pretty stinking good. And in the comments, again, all the trolls coming in that aren't even really well-meaning. They're just being ridiculous. And some of them say that they're longtime shareholders. I'm like, look, just literally get rid of your shares. I am not here on YouTube to convince any of you to hold on to your shares. If you want to sell your shares, please sell them right now so that you can look at yourself in the mirror the rest of your life and remember that you held on to shares for almost 6 years just to turn them into 60% less valuable, and then you decided to walk away. when the company that you invested in 6 years ago was burning hundreds of millions of dollars a year. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And now, fast forward to today, the company's operating income is growing at 1,427%. So yeah, if you want to sell, just like literally just like you can sell if you want to sell. You know what I mean? Like 5 years in a row of improving gross margins, 5 years in a row of declining SG&A, 5 years in a row of growing operating income, 5 years in a row of growing net income. Again, I know the price action hasn't been fun yet, but which one do you think is going to break? Which one do you think is going to give first? You think PE is going to turn negative when you talk about the enterprise value? Right now, we need a new deep low for this. How low did it get? Like 1785-ish or so. We've gotten all the way down to a 5 PE, and that's based on trailing 12-month operating income that's about to go up by more than 30%. In just 2 weeks, trailing 12-month operating income is going to go up by 30%, which means PE, if the shares don't move, is going to be down another 30%. How low do you think enterprise value can get? You know what I mean? Which one do you think is going to give? You think this price action can continue forever if this continues forever? Not a chance. I don't care how many institutions are on Wall Street. I don't care how many short sellers there are. I don't care what the U.S. government does. There are real people out there with real dollars that if you literally pay them, it's like GameStop's going to become the new freaking carry trade. Literally, GME is going to be the carry trade. If the stock doesn't appreciate, you know what was speculated as far as how large the carry trade got? What was speculated is that $20 trillion was borrowed from Japan. 20 trillion. Why? Because they were being paid to borrow that cash, saying, hey, if you take this money, we will pay you 1% a year. Like if GameStop printing money says, hey, if you invest $1, or let's call it $100, if you invest $100 into our company, in 1 year, that will make $300 cash. Like just from operations. And by the way, you know what GameStop can do? What was this warrant issued as? A warrant issued as a dividend. GameStop can issue dividends. So if GameStop continues to print cash and the shares don't appreciate, oh man, it just sucks. It's just crime. It's never gonna, we're just in that day and age, yada, yada. Bull. Bull. They can approve bigger buybacks. And they can issue dividends. I'm not even talking about like crypto dividends, secret ticker, NFT dividend to squeeze. I'm just talking actual cash. And if a company with a rock solid balance sheet with the track record of years of improvement is saying, hey, for every $100 in shares you own, we pay out $120 in dividends. And by the way, we don't have any long-term debt that's interest bearing at all. How many people do you think are going to be buying GME? Is it $20 trillion worth? And we're talking about a company that right now is an $8 billion company. Do you realize that if the stock doesn't move, how much money is going to move into the stock? It's insanity. Retsy Brof, shout out from Canada. Thanks for the super, man. GME to the moon. An important message for all of us. GME to the moon. Thanks, Retsy. Sorry, I'm reading some of the comments that I've been missing. Great stuff. So what are we even talking about here? I'm getting all worked up. There are shares available for sale. There are warrants available for sale. The inversion point for the pricing window is probably the first week of September. It's not definitely. We could already be at the inversion point. I did not hold anything back. Some of y'all know I sold my car a couple weeks ago. I put all that money in. As soon as I got it, I put it in. I just sold all of my Pokemon a couple of weeks ago, and I just almost finished getting paid for all of that Pokemon. I put all of it in. I didn't wait to say, oh, maybe I can get it for $17.45 in a week and a half. We could already be at the low. But generally speaking, it would be probably in GameStop's best interest if we weren't at the low yet, so that GameStop can most effectively deploy its $2 billion buyback. Now, if you knew that and you were a short institution, then you might want to get the low lower before GameStop can buy back. You might want to get the low in sooner. Volume, short, down, get this VWAP as low as possible. And then you might want to pop it to 21. You might want to pop it to 21 so that you, on the institutional side, get a better price than GameStop got. You see, this is the game of chicken going on. This isn't secret that GameStop has a $2 billion buyback. The secret is the price floor. We don't know what the price floor is. But you as an institution, you want to get a better deal. You want this 35-day average to show a better deal for you than GameStop's buy-in. If GameStop's buying in on September 10th or September 4th, then you might want the overall shares to already be at 20 or 21, so that even by the end of this deal, the VWAP is still going to be 19 something. Maybe the VWAP gets up to 20. But if your VWAP is 20 and GameStop has to buy in at 21, then you ended up with the better side of that little game of chicken. Now, GameStop still ends up net reducing the float because they issue 1.4 billion at 19, but they buy back 2 billion at 20, well, you're still better off for it. Even though you burned up 5% of that delta, we have a 45% delta to work with, because that's how much larger 2 billion is than 1.4, if that makes sense. Let's get back to shares versus warrants, because Benji says exasperated. Exasperated. I might have said exasperated instead of exasperated. Thanks, Benji. Because Gold says, can the warrants still be extended regardless of price? Adam says, I'm 98% confident on the warrants. 2% has my butt puckered because of my crap ton of warrants. So let's talk on warrants. Ashton Kutcher says, I'm down like 10K on my warrants. They got me sweating. Great. Let's talk warrants. I said earlier, the downside protection of warrants is very low. It's very low. Now, GameStop does have the ability still to extend them. And you would think that they would. They really probably would extend them, except that it seems likely that they won't have to extend them. Many of you know, Ryan Cohen, interviewed by Bloomberg, was asked, and he said, if you follow me into trades, you're going to do really well. We know that he holds the warrants, and as the real DD is generally in the comments section, someone was kind of going back at me saying, how do you know he hasn't sold? And the answer is because he would have to file with SEC if he sold, like same day or within one business day. Like he'd have to tell us if he sold, and he hasn't sold. If you follow into trades, you should pay off well. So if this was any other context, any other company, I would not touch these warrants with a 30-foot pole or whatever the length pole is supposed to be. I wouldn't touch them. It's $1.65 of totally extrinsic value on a 2-month time horizon. I wouldn't. Now, would I, with money that I'm totally prepared to lose, like if I was 100% prepared to lose the money, would I touch these in a different company? Still probably not. But the fact that it's GameStop, combined with Ryan Cohen's interview response, it does give you some level of confidence, not just GameStop because GameStop, but GameStop because of the catalysts, right? All of these signs are pointing towards an imminent repricing, including these convertibles that we just spent so long talking about. The catalysts lining up, the actions of the company lining up, the interview with the CEO lining up with these warrants should deliver real value. Is why I do have 22% of my portfolio in warrants. I own, personally, I just tabbed it up earlier. It's more than 26,000 warrants and more than 8,000 shares, which the equity value of each of those puts me at about 78.22. My clients also hold warrants, not quite as aggressively as 4-to-1, but they're more like 5-to-1, 5 shares to 1 warrant. Really, actually, maybe closer to 7-to-1, somewhere in that type of range. I guess probably 6-to-1. One warrant for every 7 shares. That's probably where they're at. Altogether, I'm managing, well over a $4 million position in GameStop stock and warrants. So it's not like I'm bearish on the warrants. Thanks, Jaspo, for the happy birthday wishes. But I do just want to highlight that as nice as these catalysts are, is there any reason why they have to happen in September and absolutely couldn't be pushed to January? eBay plan, technicals, obviously Q2 numbers will come out, and we do think power packs will be material, but does that have to mean that immediately there's a substantial appreciation? Those in and of themselves, those are not really the strongest catalysts we're talking about. When you talk about the buyback, they don't have to do that. Roaring Kitty, DK Butterfly, they don't have to do that. S&P 500 inclusion, obviously those are bigger picture things. The catalysts, it seems pretty plausible, even the Japan carry trade. It seems like a lot of these things will come to a head in the next 2 months, but they don't have to. It could be January, right? It could be. Now you think about Ryan Cohen's interview. And the one thing it's just got to keep you up at night, if you're someone that's like 80% warrants and 20% shares, if you're really just legging into the warrants and you think you're invincible to the risk of loss because of that Ryan Cohen interview, I would just offer to you that Ryan Cohen has burned GME investors via interviews before. Happy BX4YG says there are 100% warrant investors out there. And I'm not saying that the most likely situation is that your warrants lose value. I think the most likely situation is that they do appreciate in value. It's just a matter of risk reward. I'm not really saying I'm bearish on the warrants. I'm just saying when it comes to your general goal of surviving on the earth, like if we're talking about actual survival, to be 100% warrants is quite risky. Doesn't seem like they'll expire worthless, but Ryan Cohen saying that those who have followed him have done well, that's not like a super clear promise. Last fall, he talked about the collectibles business. And he said, hey, the collectibles is doing nearly a third this calendar year of our sales. And I went really into the weeds of that description by Cohen. And the collectibles finished at 29%. Is that really nearly a third? Nearly a third is a little bit generous. I think in hindsight, that in Ryan Cohen's mind's eye, he was including power packs into that number, which if he did, power packs in Q3 and Q4 of last year was another 25 million, another 120 million in sales. If you were to take that 120 and add it on top of this, you would be at 31.5%. But of course, power packs off balance sheet. All I'm saying is my estimations for how GameStop would finish last year were thrown off pretty substantially by what I thought was really clear instruction or tipping from Cohen that ended up being generally still relevant commentary, but really not worth getting too excited about, particularly because hardware did not keep pace at all. At the time of the interview, Q2 numbers were in, but Q3 and 4 were not. So So at the time of the interview, you're looking at what hardware just did because of the Nintendo Switch 2, and you're thinking, holy smokes. Collectibles, almost a third for full year? Like, you start extrapolating this out and you're like, well, it's doing so stinking much. And it's like, well, it is doing a lot. It was very impressive. It obviously was a very impressive year fundamentally for GameStop, primarily thanks to their collectibles business. But what he didn't say in that interview is, oh, also Switch 2 sales are totally not going to sustain what we just did. Like Q2 is the peak for now. Maybe in Q4 of 2026, right? Holiday Switch 2 sales for its second year, I bet have a pretty good chance to eclipse that. But an interview from Cohen that you thought was foolproof, it turns out it was not foolproof. You also have back in the day, right? His first public comments about GameStop in the shareholder meeting. What was the infamous quote? I'll type it in the chat for you. Buckle up. Buckle up, Ryan Cohen says to GME investors. What does he also post on X? What does he also post on X in 2021? I'll type it for you. Oops, Moaz, my bad. Oops. Did I say Mass Effect is coming out? I meant, oops, Moaz, my bad. Ryan Cohen, I like Cohen. I like GameStop. But if you were in 2021 thinking, man, Ryan Cohen just gave a super, like, how much more clear does it get? He literally just said Moaz, and then he deleted the tweet like a day later, not even a full day, which almost further implicates the tweet. Like, if it's not a big deal, just leave it up. But if you really meant something's really about to happen, then I bet you do have to delete that. And then you tell all the shareholders in the shareholder meeting, you tell them, buckle up. You could have said, this is going to take 5 freaking years. So, hey, just, and he did say, we're not here for fancy promises. We're here to work, yada, yada. He did talk about Wall Street and the Wall Street, which again would kind of tickle your feathers if you're thinking he's about to give Wall Street the middle finger. So 2021, it seems like Ryan Cohen indicating GameStop stock is about to go up by a lot. And it did a couple times, but Moaz did not happen as people anticipated happening. Not at all. And then basically radio silence from Cohen for 3 calendar years. That's all he says is, we're still working hard. Okay, cool. 2025, and Cohen's interviewing again. Oh, shoot. We hadn't seen a Cohen interview in many moons. And he's talking about collectible sales. He leaves out the general leveling off of the Switch 2. He makes you think there's no doubt that this 2025 is going to be absolute fireworks. It was not absolute fireworks. And was I reading too much into that one? Sure. But he said nearly a third when he said collectibles got down to about 10% or whatever he said. And when he used that, what was it? Was it 10? I don't remember the exact number. I think he said when I started, it might have been as low as 12%. Like, it was one of these numbers that what he referenced was less than 1% away from the real number. So let's just use this and say it was 12%. Like when I took over, collectibles was 11% or 12%. Okay, yeah, it really was. Like that's how low it really was. And now it's going to be just about a third. Well, no, that you're four times further away from your estimation to the upside as what you just described as your estimation floor. Is he intentionally creating bag holders so that he can scratch Wall Street's back? I don't think his big picture goal is to screw over retail holders or to scratch Wall Street's back. But do I think that some of his interviewing and some of his posts, I do think Ryan Cohen to create some bag holders in 2021. I will say, I do think that he knew that he needed long-term shareholders, and if most speculators from the Wall Street Bets days knew how long this was going to take, they would not have direct registered and sat on their hands for 6 years. Most people would not have done that, right? But if everyone had left the play, GameStop might not be where it is today. So do I think he used his words to create a sleight of hand to maybe mislead some amount of overly aggressive retail holders for the greater good of the long-term performance of the company? I do think that. Would he do that this time with the warrants? Probably not. He holds the warrants, right? Probably not. It would not make sense for him to let this go worthless. But I'm just saying I wouldn't put it totally 100% past Ryan Cohen. This is dilutive. It does give GameStop $1.9 billion at 32 a share. But what if Ryan Cohen thinks they're about to be at 62 a share? Well, why would I dilute at 32 if I, Ryan Cohen, think that I'm going to get this beyond 50? I could just let these expire worthless and then issue a new warrant at a $50 conversion price. I don't have to extend these warrants that are locked in at 32. I could issue new warrants at 50. I'm not trying to talk anyone out of buying warrants. Again, I think they're two securities associated with the same company. I don't think there's any reason for any fighting. I am simply offering my perspective on the reality that the downside risk for the warrants really is a 100% loss in 2 months and a week. Like that really, you are not invincible from that outcome. And I am not for 22% of my portfolio, and my clients are not for a large portion of their portfolio. Illegal says, do I have warrants CRS? I do. Stock price. We'll get into some stock price thoughts. Adam says expiry would hurt. I agree. Expiry would hurt a ton. Ashton Kutcher says, if the warrants ended up worthless, I'd probably lose a lot of respect for Ryan Cohen and pull a lot of money out of this play. And Adam says, I hear you, mainly because he has the power to extend them and would have to have chosen not to. Easy Rider says, happy birthday, man. Thanks. So again, that all sounded very kind of cynical. I earlier today literally am sitting at a coffee shop, sipping my coffee, and what I'm processing is, will I right now sell all of my non-DRS shares. I have my DRS shares, which are the majority of my shares, but then I have these Fidelity shares. I was thinking today, will I sell all my shares in Fidelity and move them all to warrants? Earlier today, I was thinking that. So, and I decided not to. I decided to stand pat. So, but I mentioned that just to balance out, like I'm very bullish on the warrants. I'm not trying to lose my clients' money. I'm not trying to lose my money. There is a perfectly logical rationale and runway for these warrants to appreciate very meaningfully, and they can be extended. In some ways, warrants can also appreciate substantially in ways that shares can't. For example, warrants could squeeze without the shares squeezing. The borrow rate on the warrants is like 122%. Let's see what it is right now. If my internet wants to internet. I guess it doesn't. Jeez. Robin the Hood, I guess. Tell me, Squire, what is the borrow rate right now for the warrants? 121.5%. The warrants themselves could squeeze. There's only 59 million warrants, and some of those have already been early exercised. There could be more than that many warrants. So they are a separate derivative that needs to be delivered. And could there be phantom warrants sitting in people's accounts according to the amount of naked shorting that's happened with GME? And that as we get closer to expiry, more and more of those warrants get expired. People thought, and maybe institutions thought, oh, surely retail will sell the warrants when they're already down 50+% on their warrant position, right? Surely retail will sell. Well, what if retail doesn't sell? What if retail actually buys? And what if they don't only buy? What if they buy and exercise? Now you don't just owe a phantom warrant, you owe cash. Oh, you don't just owe cash, you owe a security, right? The warrants themselves could squeeze even if the underlying doesn't. The warrants could be naked shorted, hypothetically, for now, but they can't be once they're expired, right? If people actually convert, then those warrants will have to ultimately those will have to function the way that they should function. The shares don't have an expiry date. The expiry date on the warrants, as it relates to the potential that the warrants could squeeze, actually works in the warrants' favor. Also, we are in a pricing window. Based on what? The daily average price of the shares, not of the warrants. So institutions that are early converting, they want these shares as low as possible. By the way, nice little couple cents per share since we started streaming. Let's go. Back into 18, let's go. Institutions need the shares low to convert as many of them as possible, but they don't need the warrants low. So we could see a 15% pop on a Friday, August 21st, even though it's pretty unrelated to the underlying stock price movement. So there's upside to the warrants. And of course, the total upside is higher because each warrant represents a share, but only costs $1.65, whereas a share costs $18 and now 5 cents. Let's go shares. Let's go. Let's go. So in terms of like, if GME goes on a run, once you're past that 32 threshold, you're making money a lot faster having bought warrants at this price than shares. Finally, warrants can increase in value simply through extension. even if GameStop stays pinned at 18 for months and months, if in 1 month GameStop announces an extension for these warrants to October of next year, then overnight these warrants double in value because of all the extra theta that gets added to the warrants. So I like for myself and for my clients that there's a chance for really outsized returns in the near term. If these catalysts line up the way that it seems like they're lining up, if what I think Q2 is going to do, if Ryan Cohen delivers on what Ryan Cohen has communicated, then these warrants have asymmetrical upside, even relative to the shares, which have asymmetrical upside of their own right. You add in the potential for them to squeeze, the finite expiration date, the ability for them to be extended and increase in value that way, the reality that they are not directly impacted by the convertible pricing window. And I like there's different ways you can win with a warrant, not to mention the potential that warrants are exchanged rather than exercised directly, but something of value is offered in exchange for the warrants. Maybe 7-for-1 shares of Teddy, for example. So I like the warrants, but I decided when I was thinking earlier today, will I leg even heavier into warrants? Will I end up 40, 50% warrants? And at least today I thought it's just too much speculation, not enough solid ground for me to have that risk appetite. Also, I personally have a lot of financial obligations. I've got debts I'm paying off. I got 5 mouths in my household to feed. I do not have that much money that I feel like, yeah, if I lose it, it was worth the risk. I had a lot of that in 2021. I don't have a lot of that in 2026. So I'm not trying to lose my lunch over another Ryan Cohen interview that may or may not have meant what we all assumed he meant. So that's the cynicism in me, but also the genuine bullishness in me as it relates to the warrants. Punky says, how old are we today? I am 32, Punky. Thank you very much. Adam says, smart Jeremy, nothing is promised. An expiry is a possibility. One must weigh into the risk. Let's lean into the 741 thing. Thanks, Larry. Larry Jones popping in the chat again. Sorry, I missed your chat at first earlier. Return to the land, Larry. Be there soon, dog. We're working on it. Let's think about 741. Let's just pretend that has any relation to the warrants, which I don't think it really does. But let's just talk about it for a sec. Gotcha, Larry. If 7 warrants ultimately was enough to be exercised for 1 share of GameStop, well, we know that GameStop, in the case of exercising, would be at a 32 a share price point. But the warrants would only be valuable to the extent that GameStop is above 32 a share. You tracking with me so far? Maybe I'll type it out this way. Warrants 741. Again, this doesn't really matter. It's just a little thought exercise on the risk reward, thinking about shares versus warrants to wrap up this kind of part of the conversation. If we were to say that a GME share is 34, what is warrants extrinsic value? 34 divided by 7. 7 is too, so 34 is too low of a target. You tracking with me? We would want 7 warrants to equate to 1 share, and for that warrant value to match up with the intrinsic value, which right now the intrinsic value would be 2. You tracking with me? So if we go to 30 to 35, sorry, let me go ahead and G143. Then the warrants are 5, which is still not the right number. 36, you'd want it to be 4, but it's not. 37, you'd want it to be 5, but it's not quite. 38. 5 is probably great because there's just a tiny bit of volatility in there. Sorry, guys. Reading up on the comments. If GameStop on October 31st is at 37 a share, then hypothetically on pure intrinsic value, the warrants would have 5 a share, and extrinsic, they would have about 28 cents of value. Warrants would be worth $5.28 in the week leading up to expiry. If you were to get a weekly call on the week of, you would end up at, paying 28 cents per share, or in call form, $2.80 for the call option on a weekly at the strike that is the current price. If I lost you on that, don't even worry about it. If 7 warrants ends up being worth 1 share, meaning if you were to sell 7 warrants and be able to buy 1 share, then you're looking at shares would have to be somewhere around $37 a share. You could say 38, somewhere in that type of range would be the price per share that GameStop would be targeting to ultimately execute a 7-for-1, whether that is a direct conversion from warrants or whether that's something that GameStop offers in exchange for the warrants. That's pretty much what you're thinking of. If GameStop gets to 37, again, the shares will have more than doubled. You're 100% up on the shares if GameStop gets to 37. The warrants currently are 166. They, in this case, would be 528. The warrants would have tripled. If in 2 months, GameStop has doubled, GameStop warrants would have tripled. As far as getting a type of, if I'm GameStop leadership and I'm thinking about price anchoring related to the warrants, it's relevant to me that they started out about $3 worth. You don't really want them to be worth less than $3 when it's all said and done, because that means people would have been better off just selling them right off the jump. You would want it to be where people are better off having used the warrants what they're actually for, rather than people being better off just selling your warrant. Because next time you issue a warrant, you're signaling that people should just sell it, that it's not actually worth anything. What was the peak? About $4.35 a share. So again, another piece of tangential evidence, not really that weighty, not that conclusive, but you would not want the warrants less than about $4.30 a share. especially not less than $3. Which, in terms of intrinsic value, you're talking about GameStop at 36. You would not want GameStop less than 36 when it comes to late October. If GameStop was at 36, again, your shares will have doubled. And your warrants, if they end up being worth 430, will have gone up 2.5x. The thing is, if GameStop's at 40, your shares are up 2.5x, but your warrants are up like 5x, right? The multiplying effect just gets crazier and crazier. But if GameStop's at 32, your shares are up 90% and your warrants are down 100%. That's just, you don't want to overexpose yourself to that type of asymmetric downside. Because if GameStop is at 32 late October and all your warrants are worthless, Ryan Cohen will not give two F's about how much money you dropped into warrants. All he's going to talk about is freaking the fundamental execution of GameStop. He just now, for the first time in some of his interviews, has begun dipping his toes into the actual performance of the stock, right? Shareholder value. But I don't think he is if the stock's up 90%, he's not going to cry a river for warrant YOLO bets. He's just not. He's going to say, hey, we finally broke through a resistance point that has proven challenging for literally my entire tenure, and we have finally made that ceiling our floor, and it's up and to the right from here. It would be very good news for GME, but it would be very bad news for warrant hodlers. I don't think that's the most likely outcome. I give that like a 10% chance. 10% that GameStop's up a bunch and warrants are worthless. I don't think it's super likely. But you can only play your own cards. And I will say one other kind of cynical thought. Ryan Cohen, he has like 15 or 20% of his net worth in GameStop. Estimated $5 billion. Of Ryan Cohen's GameStop position. Like 1.5? Yeah. 1.3 of 5 billion is 26%. 25% of Cohen's net worth, hypothetically, is GME. That doesn't mean anything necessarily, but if you're talking about a super highly concentrated GameStop position, if you're talking about GameStop plus warrants between the two of them representing 100% of your net worth, which for me, it's greater than 100% of my net worth personally, not financial advice, of course. I'm just saying you got to consider that you are exposing yourself to way more risk than even the CEO is exposing himself to. And he is exposing himself to more risk than almost any CEO is for any other company, and it's still a fraction of 100%. You know what I mean? Any other thoughts on shares versus warrants before we move on? Plain Golden says, happy birthday, man. I appreciate it. Perhaps some brokerages will charge a fee to exercise the warrants. We shall see. I don't know how to say your name, but Theo, I'm just going to call you Theo, says, hey, I like you. Happy birthday. I like you too. Cheers. Looking like GME is going to have a red day, which, if we just want the best for GameStop, we probably want about 2 more weeks of red days. Maybe just 1 more week of red. The inflection point, I believe, is coming soon. Very fun. Let's talk a little bit of catalysts, and then maybe I'll do some Q2 stuff. Our catalysts here, we've got the Japan carry trade. It almost breached 160, a little bit of a dip again. Working on approaching it, but I'd say August is pretty much in the clear at this point, considering that they let it run to 163 before taking action last time. Means we probably got to get closer to that 163 mark again. So hypothetically, could this happen in September? It certainly could. But nothing too imminent. But still very much in play. Big picture. eBay plan. We've thought about a plan release for eBay could come before the actual partnership is announced or terms, etc. Right? This is the Ryan Cohen saying, hey, a detailed presentation is coming soon. He reiterated in the Bloomberg interview, like, hey, if we they were asking for his plan, more detailed plan. He said, I'm going to be giving that to shareholders, not to a TV show. So what are you looking at here? Again, August, pretty much not happening. It could still happen in August. There is a week left. But more likely, this might coincide with Q2. This could happen before Q2. But overall, I would shift them out of August, not necessarily because they haven't happened yet, but because I think GameStop will get a better price on their buyback if they wait just a few more days. Technicals exploding. Exploding. Maybe don't do explosions. XRT. It is still on Reg Show. It's been on Reg Show for over 2 months now. I think this is why GameStop released earnings early for their Q1 earnings in June. I think they knew through the tactic of surprise that they would be able to keep the pressure on and wait until that pressure continues to accumulate, allowing it to release post September 23rd. But regardless, XRT is still very much on Reg Show. GME, very much still trading at multi-year lows, which generally you would imagine coils the spring or pressures the coil, right? Quarterly OPEX on September 18th, that is still happening. Institutional ownership is still rising. As far as IV and volume is still generally quite low. IV has been fluctuating quite a bit, but generally rising. Generally rising IV, not too crazy levels yet, but interesting given how static the stock has been. If a normal stock trades flat, like this, of course, is an IV spike. And we saw it spike from, it was at like 24. and now it's at 46.9. But we saw it get all the way to 50 something. And then we've seen it get all the way back down to like high 30s. And now it's climbing again. Or really even like mid 30. All that to say, this price action, flat, low, flat, low, flat, low, flat, low, this is not price action that would tell you IV should be building. So the fact that IV is building, the fact that we saw a 15% pop on the warrants on Friday, there are some cracks happening as far as IV goes. Now, what about borrow fee and shares available? Well, interestingly, when this began, and by this, I mean like the convertible window and pre-convertible window, right? When this catalyst tracking began, we were sitting at 8 million shares available and a fee closer to like 0.35. Now we're down 25% of the shares, and our fee is about 25% higher than it was before. Generally, the lower the shares available and the higher the fee, the more the technical pressure. All that to say, is this explosion still doing for a September-October release? I'd say some of the signs are flashing red, like the reg show and multi-lows. Some of them are more orange or yellow, but all of them are certainly notable. A bit interesting. Q2 earnings obviously is going to happen. It's going to happen in September. Overall, looking more and more likely that this will be a very, very impressive quarter. We'll get into that here in a bit. Power Pack's materiality, almost certainly happening. It's Knight is a frequent commenter over here at Budget for Life. I've been manually tracking via Reddit and Power Pack's Twitter any polls and kind of backdating odds to give me an idea for what type of revenue is happening. I estimate conservatively 100 million in revenue was done for Power Packs. It could be, by my estimates, more like 150 million. It's Night has been scrapping via bots and such the actual pulls as reported on the just pulled. And he estimates closer to a 200 million revenue mark for Power Packs in Q2. No way. Does Zinzin with a super chat. Cheers. He says, happy birthday and thanks for all the great streams. Thank you very much for your support of the channel. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Estimates for GameStop's Q2 revenue are basically around 800 million. If Power Packs did 100 million in revenue, it is material. Unless GameStop did more than 1 billion in top line revenue. They would have to beat by over 20% for my conservative Power Packs estimate to be accurate while still being immaterial. But if it's 150 or 200, there's no chance that Power Packs is not material. Now, where will we see that? Most likely in a footnote disclosure. We'll get to see Power Pack's actual numbers, but it's possible that Power Packs has an agreement with GameStop and PSA once they hit materiality for GameStop to own 80% of it rather than 50% of it, and then to consolidate its financials within GameStop's operating numbers. I think that is a huge, huge possibility. that PowerPacks goes from totally off balance sheet, totally operating in the dark, to wha-bam, we're front and center in the middle of GameStop's operations. What would be the benefit to GME to do this? Well, instead of having a side footnote, you can capture it all in your proper numbers. Not just your portion of it, but all of it. So all of PowerPack's revenue would be added to GameStop's revenue. So then GameStop would get to show another year-over-year revenue growth, even though Q2 of 2025 on the top line was so substantially skewed by this pent-up demand for the Switch 2. If they add PowerPacks to their Q2, they're going to end up with year-over-year revenue growth for the second consecutive quarter. Q3 and Q4 will be easy to beat revenue growth Q3, Q4. But if they consolidate PowerPack's accounting for their Q2 numbers, which they might, then they'll do it for Q2 as well, which would then set the precedent that, hey, it wasn't just a Q1 aberration that we beat revenue, but actually we're going to start beating revenue from here on out, right? Then they really get priced in as a growth company legit. So as it relates to the catalyst, very much in play. We will find out in September. Benna says, what's the margin on PowerPacks? That's one of the things we're super excited to find out. In all likelihood, 10 to 15% margins. Best case, 21%. Worst case, 8.25%. I mean, the actual best is 42%, I should say. But I've gone deep into this in past videos. I will do another refresh of this once we see the Q2 numbers, because even though we don't get PowerPacks numbers directly, we do get numbers that tie to PowerPacks that we can learn some things about PowerPacks from, which is where we get this covered on the channel. eBay agreement. Are we on pace for an acquisition? It seems very likely to me. Everything that has happened in the past several weeks strongly points to this being a reality. Whether the timing is September or October, to me, it just makes sense for the timing to line up with post pricing window, mainly for the sake of the warrants converting. But of course, we will see the share buyback. I would almost put this like a little bit, I guess, right after the PowerPacks materiality, like right after Q2 numbers, boom, put that 2 billion down, and maybe even during, right in that window. Convertibles off the books happens either before or after eBay acquisition. Roaring Kitty, DK Butterfly. Speculatively, I guess I could say perhaps this happens before the acquisition happens. Jeez, this mouse is ridiculous. Right, do the buyback, clear the convertibles, another solid quarter, do the buyback, clear the convertibles, add some technical upside via Roaring Kitty and or DK Butterfly. And then as the warrants are squeezing, or maybe the warrants don't squeeze, I actually only give this a 5 to 10% chance of happening. So don't get too excited about that. But as that happens, and then of course, convertibles are therefore in the money. The convertibles that remain. Warrants are therefore in the money. right? All of this is just set up for a huge run that then you can leg into an eBay acquisition with. If you don't acquire eBay, you still have this option to treat your eBay shares as fair value accounting rather than equity accounting. But this won't come into play until December. And if it's already fully acquired, then that won't necessarily matter, because if they're already fully acquired, then it'll be consolidation accounting. All that to say, are we seeing anything on the eBay front, on the technicals front, on the Power Packs front, the Q2 earnings front, buybacks, even on the DK Butterfly front, which I shared at length in this video, but other people have talked plenty on Twitter, etc. There's actually one other thing I wanted to clarify that I said on that video, this video, but I didn't really emphasize it, which is the significance of Ryan Cohen being implicated as a greater than 20% owner of DK Butterfly. That evidence is very strong, and that only makes sense if he has intention for the equity. That is an equity position that he bought when it was already bankrupt. So he bought BBBY, then he sold it, right? He should be done, right? Why is he implicated as an equity owner in the bankruptcy filings? Because he bought the equity, the bankrupted equity. He bought BBBYQ. He did not have to file a 13D because it was bankrupt. Same reason shorts didn't have to close. But I watch that video if you want to, but that is more than just a meme and a hope and a prayer and tax law this. Like he legitimately is named in these court filings, and the implication of him as a 20% owner or more is very strong. And I don't know why reasonably we would think that he would own it post bankruptcy without having an intention to resurrect it. If again, as the equity, if he holds equity, you know what I mean? Like his recovery is therefore like dependent on other equity recovery. Just because he's the majority owner doesn't mean he can say, well, screw all the other owners. Like they still, whatever compensation he would receive in this equity, like other members would also get. So anyways, all of the circumstantial evidence that has come up in the past 2 weeks has generally confirmed the reality that these catalysts are still in play, and the timing that, yeah, September, October is still looking really stinking strong. More so October than September, but it really might get pretty exciting in September because we might already be at the inflection point by literally the 1st of September as it relates to the misery that is GameStop price action these days. Y'all feeling some back the napkin math Q2 numbers? I wonder what Google says is the general barometer. 30 cents a share. Oh, geez. Show me the top line. Oh, they don't even have it. No one even really covers this company. It's just crazy. Fizzle X says, so if we buy BBBYQ, it can be beneficial. You cannot. Yes, sorry. GameStop. If GameStop buys BBBYQ, it can be very beneficial. You and I cannot buy it. It's already retired. There was a period of time where it was bankrupt, but you could still buy it. Now it's BBBYQ. The shares do not exist anymore, but the company still exists. You can watch that video I talked about. This one right here. It'll be helpful, maybe. Man, this company is just marvelous. Generally speaking, on a net sales perspective, I don't think software or hardware are set up to be particularly astronomical. We should already have Nintendo Q2 numbers that are often a pretty solid barometer for GameStop numbers, GameStop hardware, I should say. Geographical Q2 in the Americas. A nice bump, actually, in sales from Q1 to Q2 for Nintendo. Now, Nintendo's Q1 is January, February, March. GameStop's is February, March, April. So Nintendo's Q1 is lower than GameStop's Q1 because they include January in their Q1, whereas GameStop rolls that into Q4 to try to smooth out the numbers a little bit. So the percentage difference between these two, you wouldn't expect as big of a jump, which that percentage is, 166 and a half minus 218 and a half, 52 divided by 166, 31% bump in Nintendo's America's sales from Q1 to Q2. You would expect that to be milder for GameStop. Also, because of course, GameStop closed 132 stores during Q1, and during Q2, they sold France. That's 300 stores gone. That's revenue gone. You know what I mean? It's pretty simple. In light of France being sold, which happened kind of midway-ish point in Q2, that's going to be a drag. That's going to reset your sales figure a bit. If you had France, then you would think hardware might be up like maybe even like 20% from Q1. Not quite the full 32%, but that would put you at like 404 in hardware revenue. But France is a decent chunk of that. I wonder if we actually can, in relatively short order, pull up the France numbers. I think they only really break it up in the 10Ks. But let's see Q of last year. For Europe, but not broken down. In Q2 of last year, France did 107, which France has less collectible sales than the US because they didn't do PSA graded cards, which means of that 107, what is that? About 4/5 of it. Yeah, 4/5 of it was hardware. Of course, that was during the crazy launch of Switch 2. which is not that helpful for us because switch 2 was like a time and a half as large as what the Q2 normally would have been. So how do we approximate the impact? We take that 100 and we say 80% of that 100, or about 82 of this. They did some collectibles. They did some 10% or so collectibles. So let's say 70 million-ish of hardware sales from Europe, but that's overstated by a time and a half. So if you take 2/3 of, let's call it 75, it's about 50 million of Q2 hardware that belongs to Europe. But if you sold France halfway through Q2, then you take half of that 50, it's about a $25 million hit. So you're looking at a $404 million-ish minus 25 from what you lost or will lose with France. You've got about something like 379 in hardware. Again, I do these really just for entertainment, for illustration purposes, to help you kind of understand some of the thought processes for where these numbers are coming from. I am not a estimator. I really could care less what GameStop's numbers are on any particular quarter. Like, what I care about is this. I care about the big picture. Show me the trend. Have we been? Where are we going? I don't really care. I'm not betting on call options. I'm not trading the specific exact timing of exactly when blank. I'm talking big picture here. I want to see big picture trends, and I don't have to time it perfectly if I can correctly ascertain the big picture trends. So I say that just to say, once the real numbers come out, I do not care about my estimates. They aren't even really estimates. They're just like topic for conversation. We are setting up for an explosive Q3 and Q4, particularly Q4 as it relates to GTA 6. And the new Xbox handheld and just the console demand that GTA 6 will provide. It's very exciting stuff. Software, probably a similar drop percentage-wise as we saw from Q1 to Q2. And again, we do have France dragging as well. From Q1 to Q2, we saw a 26% drop year over year in terms of their numbers. And we saw that kind of rate continue throughout. So if we saw another 26% drop in, well, I wonder what, let's see what Q1 was to see if that's inverting at all in any way. If we want to look at software sales and say, show me this number minus this number, I'm pretty sure, yeah, we did just see an inversion. 0.04% Q1 to Q1 Oh, I did it Q1 to Q2. D's. G's. Not AG. AE. Okay. But it's slowing. 13% instead of Q4 to Q4 was 30%. Does that slow down in the software decline continue? In other words, has GameStop already gotten most of the shaking out of its declining software business? Maybe. We did see, as far as inversions go, software per store grew for the first time in like forever. For the first time in forever, software per store grew. Now, stores are still declining though, right? We shed 132 in Q1. We dropped another 300 at least in Q2 because of the France sale. However, the decline in stores is also, generally speaking, slowing. But I'd say to take last year's number and say, I bet that it'll be down by 15% is probably a decent ballpark for the conversation. Collectibles, obviously, is where GameStop's going to make their money. Collectibles has been growing at ridiculous paces. This 37% is their year-over-year numbers in 2025, up 55%, up 63%, up 50%, up 37%. I mean, wild. If we take that 37, it is generally like the year-over-year growth is coming down-ish, which would make you think maybe this quarter it'll just be a 30% bump year over year. The only thing is the sales per store numbers still look really stinking strong. Collectible sales per store going absolute wild. 125 in Q1. If we did this exercise for the collectibles, then you're looking at a 65% jump year over year in collectible sales. 65%. So you thought it was finally slowing down in Q4. Nope. It wasn't yet. So what do you imagine for Q2? I mean, you got to think, you take this number, it's probably going to be at least 50% larger because the base is still pretty modest. Right? Q1, you're talking about $212 million. Q2, you're talking about $228 million. Which if you grow by 50%, then you're looking at something like $850 for your top line. Which is probably still, you could argue, a bit too low. Right? I'm probably a little too high on what hardware is going to do. Because percentage-wise, collectibles has been growing in weight consistently, 28%. But it did drop from Q1 to Q2 last year, but that was mostly because of the Switch 2, right? The actual dollars sold more from Q1 to Q2. This has dollars selling less. So we're probably up by 60%. I mean, if we keep pace, obviously, we might not keep pace. Historically, collection went up Q1 to Q2 in 2024, whereas hardware went down. But collectibles pretty level, usually pretty level. Sometimes hardware has a pretty decent dip. So I might adjust this to be like, just barely more on the collectibles. And then hardware, I'd say I might even still be a decent bit too high on this hardware number, TBH. Q2 to Q2, percent decline because you're comparing to a crazy Q2, 55% growth on collectibles, something like 836, just barely higher than Q1 of last year. Historically, that's pretty much the precedent, but a growing percentage in collectibles. I kind of want to stay a little bit on the more bullish side on collectibles. Cost of sales and gross profit / gross margin. You would probably think gross margin is going to increase because the percentage of collectibles increased. Which, what do we need to do to get you to kind of a more solid margin number? I don't want to do too much. It seems a bit too modest, though. Something like this. Something like this. Thank you for the birthday wishes, guys. Thank you, Ignite Fire Dance. Vote on PC says too low. First full Power Packs quarter. Yeah, Power Packs right now, I'm assuming that it is not included in GameStop's consolidated numbers, but we will account for that in their other income. However, if they report Power Packs within these numbers, then basically this number would go up by about 150 million. And then you'd be looking at margins would probably compress actually. So you'd probably be at like, I don't know, something like 35% margins maybe. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Close to $1 billion in revenue, and you would show year-over-year growth. But to do this, they would have to control Power Packs, which right now they don't. They'd have to own more than 50%. Right now, they do not own more than 50%. They own 50%, or maybe a little bit less. But we'll get there. SG&A probably is going to come down. How much are they going to? Probably something like 10-ish%. They did sell France during the quarter, so maybe it's more like 15% this quarter. Take Q2 last year, say take 15% off, and now you're looking at 186. Most of that probably is store related. Non-store related, I'm going to say probably ticks up $1 million because that's pretty much Power Packs related stuff. Equals AP20 minus, oh geez, something like 151 in store related, a bigger drop off because of the sale of France. Asset impairment / improvements. I bet there might be something like a $10 million improvement, but maybe not. Oh, yeah. Not in the actual, I don't actually think there will be, but in other income, one of the other incomes will be any potential gain on the sale of France, which I think will be maybe something like 10 million bucks. Basically, what did GameStop sell France for? To the extent that they sold France for above book value, they recognize a gain. The book value of France was like $20 to $30 million. So if they only sold at book value, then you're looking at like a $10 million, or you're looking at no impact. But for every million that they sell above book value, they get to log as income, and they have to log as income. Thanks, Grape Ape, who says happy birthday. Augustus says Jeremiah does not look at the chat. I do my best. But I'm also trying to make sure that I don't go too slow so that anyone that watches the live stream after the fact can still get some value from it instead of purely focusing on the chat. Oh, Chris says, I have a long form question. What's the best way to send it? Oh, Augustus says, he says, I didn't say you don't. You're right, Augustus. He said Jeremiah does look at the chat. He will read it here. Sorry for obliterating what you intended to communicate. Yeah, drop it in the comment, or you can shoot me an email at brlegacy@gmail.com. No guarantee I'll respond to your email, but you're welcome to send it. I do respond to like every comment that sometimes YouTube won't tell me that I get a comment. So then sometimes I'll be looking at one of my old videos and be like, why is there a comment here that I never responded to? And I don't know why. It's like I don't get a notification sometimes, but I try to respond to every single one. Anyways, operating income. Where does that put us? Boom. Boom. A $23 million quarter-over-quarter improvement, which would also be a $100 million year-over-year improvement in operating income. Let's go. Let's go. Let's freaking go. Bitcoin. What did Bitcoin do this quarter, my peeps? Probably down, huh? What are we looking at? June, July. Oh, there's July 1st. I should probably just check my actual spreadsheet. Bitcoin finished at 78 at the end of Q1. In the end of Q2, they were at, August 1st was the day, like 63K. That was the last day of Q2. That is 15,000 doll hairs per Bitcoin. $62? 63. Dang. Something like this. End of Q2 approximate Bitcoin. $4,710. I don't think they would have bought any more. I also don't think they would have sold it. Dang. What a loss. Mitigated by some amount of money gained on covered calls. Maybe 5 million for a net. Let's just call it $68 million loss on Bitcoin. Negative 68 there. We also have some cash income. They did spend some cash during Q2 on their eBay position, but they didn't really exercise it till towards the very end of Q2. So I think their cash income will still be pretty secure. During Q1, they had $83 million of cash income. I'm not going to bore you with actually calculating it out, but let's just say that dropped to 75 of cash interest in Q1. Then we've got the eBay gain. Now they had $268 million realized at the end of Q1. However, their cost basis at the end of Q2, based on eBay at 114 a share, and their share count of eBay means they had 200. Well, sorry. Let me show you the math here. Their total gain as of the end of Q2 was 564 million, approximately. So then you net Q1 unrealized. Why? You end up with what the number was before, but now you can see it a little bit clearer. Except you can't. 295 million in new gains. We'll call it 296. $296 million of eBay gains. Income tax. They pulled a crazy maneuver on their income tax in Q1. And I remember reading something along the lines of their NOLs are basically spent. Like they're going to have to start paying income tax. They're not going to be able to recognize. Oh, they did in Q1. They did. It was Q4 that they went up 50 million. So in Q1, this tax rate, 116.8 divided by, I still got to do Power Packs income. So 10 million of this other income is a realized gain on the sale of France. Then we've got Power Packs. I expect Power Packs to be how much larger than Q1? Q1 ended up at 27. I think this is the low end of PowerPack's estimates, and I think probably they would rather it be higher. Like if they were doing anything to lower actual net income for PowerPacks before, I think that they would do anything they could to change that for this quarter. Wow. CrossFit George, member for 11 months. 11 months, not 84 years. Oh, wow. I've never seen this before. So you can like pay for your membership in advance. Pretty much. It's amazing. Thanks, CrossFit George. Augustus says, do I intend to be active on Reddit? Sore subject, Augustus. I don't have a Reddit account, genuinely. I don't post on Reddit. I don't tell other people to post on Reddit, but Redditors are convinced that I'm the spawn of Satan because I'm on YouTube. And YouTube, the platform itself, is inherently monetized, which Redditors would tell you makes me the devil. I would say it aligns interests, so you know I'm actually incentivized to create valuable analysis rather than like being some bad actor. Like it's obviously in my best interest to grow the channel, but the way I grow is through fundamental analysis of GameStop, you know. So anyways, they also don't like that I'm a financial advisor. They're convinced that this whole YouTube channel, I don't actually care about GameStop. I don't even care that my channel's monetized. I'm not in it for the channel monetization. I'm in it for getting clients, which I have gotten a total of 0 clients from this channel, and I have made 284 videos. So you ask me, Augustus, or you answer me, Augustus / the general people of Reddit, if this was my strategy for gaining clients, and I've made 284 videos, and I've gained a total of 0 clients from YouTube, do you think by this point I might have changed my strategy? Or do you think it's nice that, hey, I make a living doing something that is tangentially beneficial to GameStop and that I can offer my analysis to GameStop and give you my perspective how I'm managing client accounts, but I'm not financially dependent on YouTube. I'm not a professional YouTuber. I don't use any of the earnings for my personal well-being. They all go to DRS Book GME shares. And I should probably pause so that I can breathe. Okay. Anyways, but I don't plan on being on Reddit because it seems like Reddit doesn't really want me there, which is fine. Solid Squeeze says, happy birthday. Bubble says, I love YouTube and Reddit. They both serve their purpose. Agreed. That's the other reason why I'm not on Reddit, is because I want Reddit to do what Reddit does best, which is to offer anonymous opinions, you know? Like the email is brlegacy@gmail. That's my email. Sorry for all the rabbit trails. I do like Reddit. I that's like I was saying, it's the other reason why I abstain from Reddit is because I feel it's like disingenuous for me to try to influence what should be like an unbiased conversation within Reddit, even if the conversation's about me. Like if you want me to engage with it, then comment on my channel or send me an email. If you're on Reddit, that shouldn't involve me. You know, like if you wanted to tell me, you would have told me. But your Reddit should, you know, it's a separate place. So Power Packs, basically, I think Power Packs will do another 10 million in net income. It could be, I probably should put it a little bit lower. They probably did maybe like 3 or 4 last quarter on what was probably something like $67 million in sales. I think sales will be pretty much double, but it might not be double. It might be just more like a time and a half. I also think it's possible they suppress their income before because they were running up the expenses because they can, because it's off balance sheet. Whereas once it's material, they wouldn't really be incentivized to do that. So maybe I'll call it 7 for now. 7 million from power packs, 10 million realized gain. Now, what is the tax rate? At least what was it in Q1? 116.8 divided by, altogether here, $506 million of income, a 23% tax rate. If we were to take a 23% tax rate against $486.8 million of income, you would have some taxes there, which would give you net income as such. A little bit of a drop quarter over quarter in net income, but it does not really matter because these are substantially inflated by the eBay gains anyways. Operating income is what you're actually looking at in terms of valuing the company. And we will get into the implications of that here in a second. Year over year, $200 million improvement in net income. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. And Bitcoin already set up to be pretty nice for Q3. I mean, obviously we'll see where it goes, but it started Q3 at 63K per Bitcoin. It started at 63. It's at 79 right now. So that $73 million loss in Q2, that's already set up to be a $70 or $80 million gain in Q3. We'll see. But, when you can take the hit of a $70 million loss and no one even notices it because you have all these gains from eBay and all this improving operations, and then you're just teeing up Q3 to be that much more explosive, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. eBay closed Q2 around 114. Now you might think, oh, but that's going to set up poorly, right? Because they're going to have unrealized losses for Q3. It's not true. That's why I've got this 53.9 right here. This is GameStop's portion of eBay's net income. They switch from fair value accounting to equity accounting right as it's to their advantage to do so. So instead of being down, 50 million or whatever that 7% or more like 5% difference is, 5% on $5 billion is 250 mil. That's a $250 million loss that GameStop literally does not have to report. And instead they get to report a $54 million gain if Q3 ended today. Craziness. Absolute craziness. Brian says, happy B-Day. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. What happens to these numbers here if we roll them forward into Q2? You've got a 43% improvement in gross margins. Holy smokes. That's because Q2 margins were artificially low by all the artificial revenue coming from the Switch 2. But SG&A continuing on its amazing trajectory. Operating income going up by another 151%. Honestly, I might be low. I might be. And net income also up by over 100%. On a sales per store basis, now how many store closures happen? I don't usually guesstimate this. I just like to respond to what actually happens based on the financials. But we know that pretty much 300 are gone, but those weren't gone like during the whole quarter. So to adjust for that, let's just call it 150 for now, which would pretty much make this like 1924 in store count. In reality, the store count will be lower than that, but we would just like, for illustrative purposes for now, I don't want to overinflate. Oh, I actually already do adjust this. Oh, great, great, great. This number already adjusts for Europe because we already knew Europe was coming out. No, it doesn't. That does include Europe. Great. So literally like this will go down 308 stores or whatever it is. And this will end up being plus whatever they close from Europe and Australia. Which, let's say they close just 25 more US plus Australia stores. This is gonna make the sales per store numbers look absolutely ridiculous, I'm pretty sure. Just want to make sure all these numbers are tracking correctly. Hardware, Q2 to Q2. Right. Let's gray all these out so we all know it's just estimates. Don't get too excited. Just estimates, just conversation. Wow. Wow. So there you go. Modeling potentially a 150% improvement in operating income, a 43% improvement in gross margin, sales per store continuing to grow impressively, 28% year over year, exceeding the pace from Q1. Collectibles growing 60%. Now let's talk about valuation. But let me pause for a sec. Say what's up in the chat. Any other just general thoughts on these numbers here? Something like 850 in revenue, something like 41 or 42% gross margins, operating income of $166 million, net income almost surpassing Q1 despite a $70 million hit from Bitcoin losses. Overall, and PowerPack's materiality that will show us revenue that will basically make this number look more like this number, whether they include it in their revenue or they put it as a footnote. Either way, that's real value that GameStop will be able to bring to the surface and highlight a bit more clearly than they have before. Man-Made Sound says germ. Punky says we also might get a surprise tariff rebate. Very true. Very true. Now let's look at the projections, because on a PE basis, right, if GameStop stays where it is right now after they report these numbers, net cash wise, Do we expect their net cash to increase by more than 200 million based on the close of Q2, which I'm including their eBay position as cash because it's a security. I put cash and securities together. That's probably about right. They do get the cash proceeds from France, so that's another little catalyst, but generally speaking, they make money, right? They have $167 of operating income, and cash flow is probably even a bit higher than that because there are non-cash expenses like depreciation and amortization. So their actual cash probably went up by 200-ish. Plus, of course, you also have cash interest. The interest income from your cash is real cash. The Bitcoin losses is a non-cash impact. So overall, this net income of 374, income taxes are real cash out the door. eBay gains are a real appreciation. So when you value that security together with your cash, you're looking at probably a $400 million improvement to net cash and securities. About a $400 million improvement, and that's all before convertibles. Convertibles will grow this by even more, right? But let's just lock into this specific quarter. Right now, their implied enterprise value would go all the way down to 1.8 billion, which is just insane to think about. The PE of this Q2 a year ago, GameStop's PE was at 38 at the low post Q2 earnings filing. Their next deep low was 2166. Their next deep low, 1807. And look what happened this quarter. Whoa. Look at that, guys. From 38 to 22 to 18. Can you imagine an inverse exponential slope? Did I say it right? What am I thinking of? Oh, geez. Like this one, but imagine it going. Don't teach me all this bullcrap. Here you go, right? Just imagine this green line is facing the other way. You come down sharper, and then you start to steady out, right? Does that make sense? You go from 38, and before 38, by the way, we were at 53. Before 53, we were at 400, right? So do you see this? Before that, we didn't even have a PE. We had no trailing 12-month operating earnings. Look at this, from 400, boom, cut like 86% or whatever, all the way down to 53, boom, cut in half, more than half again, all the way down to 20, like the logs going, whoo. And then do you see it start to taper off from Q3 to Q2? Like, okay, Q3 to Q4. We might be starting to find our bearings a little bit. We're probably almost there. And then boom, the Friday after earnings, we were at a PE of 7. These days, in the deep low, we got to a PE of less than 6. Whoa. What am I trying to say? I'm trying to say If this slope indicated to you that GameStop is close to the floor and then it gets cut on a PE basis by 3x, it means we're below the floor. It means we're below the freaking floor. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, we're almost there. Whoa! Crazy. And here we are with the potential to, how much do I have operating income improving by? Change in operating income, 100.4. So we've got a 100.4, which that's $10 million more than I originally thought. So already an even bigger blowout than what I had initially kind of illustrated as far as their Q2 numbers. You're talking about a PE that if GameStop doesn't change is going to be in the threes. In the threes. Jeez. Which the question is basically, will it? Will it? Or did we actually just hit the floor? Right? PE, operating income. Look at trailing 12-month operating income. 100 million, 177, 232, 386, 486. Holy smokes, right? The company making more and more and more money. But what's happened to the stock, right? Wait, the past year making more and more and more money? I don't see that on the chart. Well, exactly. Exactly. How do you make sense of this chart with this earnings? The only way you can make sense of it is a Band-Aid called earnings compression. The question is, have we finally finished compressing? Will we actually hold at a PE sub 4? Or have we actually hit the bottom in terms of PE? Which if we have, that means we stay above 6. And if we stay above a 6 PE, then you're looking at we stay above 20 from here and forevermore. Right? Which in and of itself, not that exciting. But the real point is, if you've hit the floor, if you've inverted, then it's not like 6 becomes the ceiling, right? If you've inverted, well, how fast do you go from 6 to 12? 12 is still below industry standard. If the bottom's in, why not recover some of that right away? And by the way, if you continue executing, well, who's to say 12 doesn't become 19 pretty stinking quick? And all of a sudden, we're still in 2026, and the world's our oyster. And this is even net of dilutions, etc. I mean, it's a very interesting curiosity, a very interesting question. I got to use the restroom, to be honest. And I shall return for a few more minutes of splendid conversation and Q2 earnings, etc. But for now, ta-ta. I will leave it on this. I'll leave it right here so that you can take this in for a second. BRB. What in the world? Herm? You crazy dude. Herm with the $20 super chat. Grab one on me. Thank you, Herm. Crazy. Paul Ray says, OMG, someone kidnapped Jeremy. Ashton Kutcher says, 140 of you watching, but not even 100 likes. What's not to like? Man, it's been fun, guys. It's been fun. So I'll probably leave the balance sheet unspeculated about, but basically cash should be lower. But you're not going to see it on my spreadsheet because I combine cash and securities together. You're not concerned about eBay stock price moving forward because you can switch to equity accounting. Power packs, big X factor is not just materiality, but also do they do consolidation accounting? Meaning, has GameStop actually deployed even a bit more cash to purchase a higher equity stake of Power Packs LLC to where then they can record all of Power Packs income as their own. And then the footnote just clarifies that they don't actually own 100% of it. They actually only own 60 or 70 or 80% of it, etc. Those are some huge X factors. Bitcoin, a big drag. eBay, a big gainer. Overall operating income up over 100% year over year. Another huge year over year improvement to operating income, as well as sales per store continuing to grow as well. More efficient, still a lower SG&A, and now France is out of the way, and you can start building year-over-year comps based on your actual go-forward business. GameStop finally arriving at its actual go-forward store count. Not that they won't still trim a few, but generally speaking, really finished with the arduousness of 5 years and ready to detonate one or many of the catalysts that seem to be brewing, that are all still very much in play, and nothing in the past 2 weeks has indicated any less than that. There hasn't been anything conclusively bullish in the past 2 weeks, but all the little tea leaves we've gotten have been confirming rather than dismissing the legitimacy of these catalysts, as well as the timelines that they're on. And crazy Chris Leduc with a $10 super chat. You guys are ridiculous. He says, consider this a bribe. Either way, love your stuff. A bribe, I'm assuming, for an email that you have sent me, which I see. I see the email. So I will, I'm not going to read it live because you don't want me to read it live, do you? Do you want me to dive into this right now? This is going to take me actually a little bit too long I want to actually think about it rather than just giving you a knee-jerk reaction since you took the time to write that out. So I will get back to you. I appreciate your bribe. You don't have to send me a bribe. And someone Venmoed me $50. Not one of you guys, but one of my family members just Venmoed me $50 for my birthday. So let's go. That used to be 1 share, then it used to be 2 shares. They just about Venmoed me 3 shares, baby. Let's go. Let's go. No after hours filings, right? Not that we expected it, but just making sure. Very fun. Great stuff. I do think we're still a week away, maybe 2, from the inversion on this dreadful price action. But I've bought everything I can buy. I don't have any more money coming in, guys. So I am officially, for me personally, rooting for GameStop to begin ticking up, but I will not be really I'm not going to be losing sleep over it for a few more weeks here. But once we get to about September 15th, for me, that's when it's like, all right, let's getting pretty close to the 23rd. We're already probably done with earnings at that point. Like, let's start to see the plan kind of unfold. And hopefully it's even more exciting of a plan than what I've been discussing here on the channel. Plenty of videos still coming this week. A lot of analysis still to be analyzed. But as it relates to, will I drop a video this week that means that GameStop's going to $50 today? Probably not. It's probably not going to $50 today, this week. But there is still a lot of angles to the company that I have yet to even discuss on the channel. So I'm excited for those that really do want to understand the opportunity. Hopefully you do get some great value this week. Ashton Kutcher says, we're all tapped out, big dog. I could only afford 3 warrants today. I did get myself about, I got another 100 shares and whatever was left for warrants. So it was another nice little chunk there for me today. But that's pretty much, I think that's the last chunk. I get paid again in October. I only get paid 4 times a year. So, in the in-between, what can you really do? But I really would, I don't want it to be low October 1st, which is when my next payday is. I want it to be higher, for sure. For sure. Okay, we should probably wrap this one up. How long have I been here? 3 hours. Wow. Paul Ray says, sell myself at the retirement home. Them old ladies have deep pockets. I sure hope you're not talking about literally selling my body. Are you talking about infidelity for retired ladies? That sounds like the grossest thing I could ever do in so many ways. And that's where the state of this live stream has gotten. So it is time to call it a day. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks those who left birthday gifts and supers or super thanks later on after watching whatever. I do appreciate it a lot. I'm excited for all that's to come in GameStop. That's my hot take on the stock, on warrants versus stocks, on the catalysts, and on Q2 earnings. Overall, shaping up pretty nicely. And what I think will be the inversion point for the pricing window, which is not all the way to the end of the pricing window, but actually a bit sooner. And don't forget, 32. 32. 32, lads and lassies. I'm 32. Warrants converted 32. Jeremiah 32. The theme not just related to the hopes of potentially a DK butterfly recovery for myself personally, but also the theme for my 2026, which just so happens to only have basically 4 months left. Did I today look up on various custom jewelers and eBay any particularly valuable pieces of gold artwork of the number 32 just in case? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Just in case. I didn't find any that I quite liked yet. I'm not even really sure what I'm looking for. But I can see it already, guys. Before this year is over, we're shopping for something 32. I'll do it with you guys. I'll do it with you guys. We'll do it on a live stream together. We'll spend some money together at GameStop. Maybe GameStop would sell something super high-end 32. Or when GameStop owns eBay. Oh, duh. Duh. Ashton Kutcher says, I'm going to need a gold 33 chain. Is that because you're 33? It's a great question. Adam says, great stream today. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, guys. Thank you guys. All right. That's all I got for you today. I will see you in the next one. Cheers and happy birthday to me and to Arian Foster and to Rupert Grint and to William Wilberforce and to Cal Ripken Jr. To all the other Virgos out there that cusp Leo. Cheers. See you in the next one.